What is up, guys, and welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're back on F1 2016 mobile and for career mode. Today we have episode 2, the Chinese Grand Prix in season 1. If you missed the previous episode at Bahrain, which was the first race of the season, we're obviously doing a reduced season. As you can see on screen, we signed as the Ferrari, I'm thinking it's 2021, the Toro Rosso of Carlos Sainz. So go watch that. That was a very interesting episode where we created this career mode, doing a reduced season, which means we get to choose the calendar. So we started off Bahrain and today we're going to China, so be sure to watch that one because that was very interesting. And today we're moving on to China. Might have just shown some spoilers of the last episode, so I hope you looked away. Anyway, be sure to subscribe for more and let's get on for today's video. And speaking of which, starting today's video, we have practice. Now, I'll be honest, this is not one of my strongest circuits. It's also a decent circuit for the AI. In practice, I did a lot of my running on the medium tyre. However, Nico Hulkenberg, of all people, in the Force India, topped out practice, which was a bit of a surprise. I know the Mercedes were on a harder compound of tyre, but still, that's pretty impressive. As always, I thought I'd just show you the results from practice because it's practice, it's not interesting, you don't really need to see what happens. So with the usual format of these videos, I'll just show the results from practice. And now, speaking of which, qualifying, I'll show bits of my laps. This was my lap in Q1. We obviously do one shot qualifying, so you get one chance to get into the next part of qualifying. So this was my sole run in Q1, coming towards the end of it now. It's been a decent lap. I feel like there's definitely a lot more time that I left on the table. However, let's still hope we can get out of Q1. We need to be in the top 16. That's a bit of an error there that I made. Into the last corner, we get a decent exit out of there, coming towards the checkered flag. Are we going to make it out of Q1? Yes, we are, but just by the skin of our teeth. It's P16, which is right on the cutout zone. So once again, we make it into Q2. But how much by? In the end, it's only about 7/100ths of a second, so there really was nothing in it between myself and Kevin Magnussen, who was eliminated. The Renaults, Saubers and Manners, all the cars which were eliminated. And now let's move into Q2, seeing as we made it into Q1. So here's my lap in Q2, or the best bits from it. And you'll actually notice that I'm trying to do a lap on the medium compound of tyre. That's because if we do manage to make it into Q3, then starting on a harder compound of tyre may really come of advantage to me in the race, as we can be more aggressive at the end. However, hurtling along the back straight, it's not been the best lap so far, and especially on a harder compound of tyre, we are going to be a bit slow, whereas I really mess up that slow speed corner. Then anyway, up to the final corner, we're going to see how bad this lap really has been. Again, lovely track limits there, DRS open across the line. Are we into Q3? No, we're not. It's only P15, so all of that qualifying on the harder compound of tyre was a complete waste. Scruffy lap from me there. However, it was likely to be slower on a medium compound of tyre. That was a big gamble. Unfortunately, my teammate Kvyat knocked out in P13, so it's a double Q2 elimination for Toro Rosso. We start 15th. We're running the same settings as we did in Bahrain. So now, let's go to the grid for race 2 at the Chinese Grand Prix.
With the clock ticking down, the drivers have a few minutes before the race event starts. Welcome to the Shanghai International Circuit for the Chinese Grand Prix.
Here we are then on the grid for the Chinese Grand Prix. We start in P15, and in the end I'm actually going to decide to start on the soft tyre. Obviously in the end we didn't make it into Q3, so we get to start on the free choice of tyre. So I am going to try and start on the soft in the end and see if we can go slightly longer on our first stint, which is what I intended to do, obviously, if I'd made it in to qualify on the mediums. Anyway, now here we are, revving up to 5 red lights for race 2 of this career mode. And it's lights out and away we go. A bit of a hold there. It's slightly long lights, but it's a relatively poor start for me. I got poor traction off the line. Part of that could be down to being on a harder compound of tyre. Anyway, this is going to be manic going in towards the kind of long swooping right-hander. It's a bit chaotic. Gravel going, Dust King kicked up all over the place, and that's Magnussen going round my outside. And in the end, in all of that, I've actually lost 2 positions, so it's not been a great start from me. But let's see what I can do into this corner. This is where there's going to be a traditional send on the brakes from me. However, in the end, Magnussen still has the outside line, and Felipe Nasser just absolutely sent it there on me in the Sauber. Had to think about that for a second. Anyway, I'm going to see if I can get Nasser back straight away, though. Try and stay around the outside there. Gone slightly deep into the corner, but in the end I go back to the racing line to see if we can cover him off. Next up, though, you can see Esteban Gutierrez and Kevin Magnussen in the Haas and Renault battling away as we head towards the Anting Stadium section. I'm going to try and send it here. No, I'm not. I'm just going to play it safe and see if we can wait for an opportunity to get the overtake done. Anyway, moving on to the long back straight. It's obviously around a kilometre long. Magnussen's had a very poor exit out of there, but look at the gaining speed we've got. We're going to fly past Gutierrez here, and we're catching up to Jenson Button and Felipe Massa. What's going to happen here? We're going to overtake Button. Are we possibly going to be able to go for a send on the brakes down the inside? It was a close one with Massa. Hulkenberg flies around the outside, so does Button, and that was Gutierrez. However, in the end, Massa has been the loser out of that. So at the end of what was a pretty manic lap 1, somehow we actually stay in P15 where we started. But now you can see lap number 3, and we're going to fly past Jenson Button, but equally that's Felipe Massa. I'm going to try and go later on the brakes, hold it round the outside to see if we can stay ahead of the Brazilian there. Thankfully we do, so in the end we've made up a place there on Jenson Button. However, I'm still under pressure from Button. He's trying to see if he can come back at me as my teammate Danny Kvyat heads into the pits. So that was the end of lap number 3, and we're now up into P12 because a couple of cars have pulled into the pit lane. Massa's putting me under so much pressure. This is a lap later. I've broken too early there. I need to leave him space. And unfortunately for me, the Brazilian has moved up into P9. So if you're wondering how we got here, obviously some cars that were on the super soft tyre have started to make some pit stops. And now unfortunately I have been passed by the Williams, who is in a quicker car, and he has been putting me under a lot of pressure for the last few laps. But anyway, let's keep going and see if we can stay with him. And now the tyres are really starting to go off as well. Lap number 6, you can see in the top right, the tyre wear indicator has come on. I'm into P8, so however, the plan to go long has kind of failed because the tyres have gone off quicker than I anticipated. So I'm actually going to call it into the pits at the end of this lap. And in the end, I really mess up the pit entry there. Straight into the gravel trap. So that wasn't supposed to happen. Anyway, into the pit lane we go. This unfortunately now means we are going to have to two-stop this race. However, we can be more aggressive and we'll have much more speed if we switch onto the super soft tyres. So you can see we've got about half the race still to go. So we can just do sort of 3 or 4 laps on each set of tyres in order to get to the end. Anyway, let's see the stop. It's a great stop from the boys. Less than 2.1 seconds. That's a brilliant stop. Anyway, where are we going to re-emerge out of the pit lane? We rejoin in P17, and thankfully for me in some clean air, which is great because now on these fresh tyres we can push on, and maybe on the next lap we can see if we can go for a fastest lap. So points may still be on the cards, however we need a lot to fight back now and lots of pace, especially now we're on a 2-stop strategy. Speaking of going for a fastest lap, here we go. I've warmed up my tyres enough, and now this is the very next lap, and we're going to go for a push lap now to see if we can steal the fastest lap, just for pride, away from any of the top teams. There's a couple more cars in the pit lane there, so that's going to promote me into up another couple of places. So this could be interesting. Anyway, you can see I make a bit of a meal there of the I don't even know what kind of shape that is. The snail shell? Is it a snail shell? I'm probably just talking rubbish. Anyway, we're going to speed up the rest of the lap and ride on board. You can see in Sector 1, I'm almost a full second up on my previous best time. And actually, you can see now we're starting to catch up to some of the cars ahead as we go onto the long back straight. We do miss out on DRS of Roman Grosjean, I think that is. However, looking at the end of the lap, you can see how much we've caught them up. Lovely track limits there at the final corner. Anyway, we do get DRS now, but across the line, and it is indeed a new fastest lap of the race for me, a 1:33.7. That's a pretty solid lap there from me. I was pretty pleased with that one. I believe that was about 4 tenths quicker than what the Mercedes did, so very, very happy. However, now that the tyres will start going off, I won't be able to beat it. I'm just wondering, seeing as my pace seems so strong actually on these super soft tyres, could we maybe try and make a brave dive down the inside of Grosjean here? We are gaining on the Haas. Is it going to be enough? In the end, I do decide to send it on the brakes, and we go up the inside into turn 1. However, I go awfully wide there and need to leave Grosjean some space. However, I quite rapidly realise that I'm still ahead, and in the end, I end up cutting him off. So we're up into P11, and points are just down the road with Hulkenberg. However, we do have to make an extra pit stop. But you can see just a couple of laps later, that is the downside. Speaking of making an extra pit stop, the tyre wear indicator has come back on again. And you know what? I'm calling it a day already on these tyres. I've only had them on for about 4 laps. Well, yeah, it has been 4 laps, and now I'm going to come into the pits for the last time today. Not going to screw up the pit entry this time. There we go, that was much better. So into the pits, we're going to go for a fresh set of super soft tyres, see if we can maybe beat our fastest lap. The only problem with this, however, is obviously the fact that I've kind of screwed myself over for points now. I don't think points are going to be possible today, unfortunately, and that's largely because I probably should have just started on the medium tyres anyway. It would have been slower at the start, but I like the idea of being aggressive at the end and having lots of speed at the end of the race. Anyway, let's see the pit stop. Again, it's another decent pit stop from the boys, 2.5 seconds. They've been on fire with the pit crew today. However, unfortunately, we come out of the pits all the way down in P20. So that's really not good for our race, and I can almost apologise because this has obviously just been my strategy today. It's been a massive boo-boo on my part. It's not been very good, and now it's dropped us so far that we're just definitely not scoring points today. I knew this wasn't one of my strongest circuits, but still, I never expected my strategy calls to be so poor. This is now Jensen Button. I've caught up to a couple of corners later. In the end, we are going to send it as we head towards the Anting Stadium section. In a way, I probably should have waited and tactically got some DRS and obviously just waited for this long straight, and I might be a bit of a sitting duck to the McLaren. However, if you look at the minimap in the top middle part of your screen, you can see I've comfortably gotten ahead of Button, and we're not going to be a threat. Now this is the next lap, and this is another purple lap attempt from me as my tyres are now in the same condition as what they would have been when we set the previous fastest lap. However, unfortunately, this is good and bad. It's going to disrupt my lap, but we've caught up to some traffic. First of all, straight down the inside of Felipe Massa, and next up on my hit list is Sergio Perez. So here we go, we're going to follow him round, and we actually get a great exit out of there, and we're putting lots of pressure on the Mexican in the Force India, and we're going to see if we can try and make a dive bomb to the inside. There we go, that was relatively simple, and that's 2 positions gained, well, in a matter of corners. And now we're trying to follow the manner of Pascal Wehrlein. This was somebody who popped up a couple of times in episode 1 in Bahrain. Wehrlein has not had a great exit, and he's already going to be vulnerable to me on the straight. However, I believe that's Massa who's trying to make it 3 wide along here. We're going to try and squeeze him out, but the Williams unfortunately gets past me, but I'm going to go later on the brakes, and I have to go wide to avoid Nico Hülkenberg there. So that was a pretty chaotic part of the lap, I must say, but thankfully I've made up a couple of places, but we're not going to be anywhere close to my fastest lap as I've been in the dirty air of other cars. There we go, we're full second off. However, here we go, and I'm practically pushing Hülkenberg through there. Unfortunately, we did have to back out of it. However, I did try and go for a switch back there down the inside. I do need to leave the German some room, and somehow I managed to recover that, and we got the move done. Absolute madness overtaking there from me. Anyway, you can see this is now lap number 13, the penultimate lap of the Grand Prix, and we're catching up to the other manner of Rio Haryanto. We're currently P15 where we started. However, I'm still under pressure from Massa. However, we're going to fly past the manor, and we are going to need to defend now. It's almost going to be 3 abreast. However, we do have the slight edge. Oh, there's a comment on my previous video. We did have the slight edge on those guys, which meant that we managed to get ahead. However, I have gone slightly wide into the last corner, but it doesn't matter as I think we are going to keep the place. And next up is my teammate Danny Kvyat, who is 6 seconds down the road as we start the last lap, and I don't think that's going to be possible for me to catch that up, so it's looking like it is going to be P14 for the Chinese Grand Prix. Overall, I think we have shown some great pace, especially considering this is not one of my strongest tracks on the game. However, it is Lewis Hamilton who has made it 2 from 2 for Mercedes. He won in Bahrain and he wins in China. So Lewis Hamilton, a perfect start to the season. He's beaten his teammate Nico Rosberg again in another Mercedes 1-2. And I believe Valtteri Bottas is going to complete the podium here as I absolutely muck up that corner there. Anyway, coming down the back straight for the final time, 1 kilometre long. The tyre wear indicators come on into the last corner. We started P15. In the end, we are going to finish P14 at the Chinese Grand Prix. So a decent drive for me considering we were on a split strategy. However, I think my strategic brain could have done much better in today's race. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. There are the race results in China. We finished P14 behind my teammate Danny Kvyat, who started 13th, finished 13th. We obviously started 15th, finished 14th, so 1 place gained. I was right, it was Bottas who joins the 2 Mercedes on the podium, finished a few seconds behind Nico Rosberg. In the end, it's a double points finish for Haas. Daniel Ricciardo only 10th place, and in the end it was Jenson Button who brought up the rear. In the Drivers' Championship, Hamilton has a big lead already over Rosberg. Verstappen and Bottas, the other 2 drivers who've been third in these races, are now unsurprisingly third and fourth. We're currently 9th, obviously, with 8 points after our great start to the season in Bahrain. My teammate Danny Kvyat on just 1 point so far, and in the Constructors, we are in 6th place on 9 points. However, Mercedes already have a stupid lead over Red Bull and Williams, so our next target is to see if we can catch McLaren. But there we have it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. That has been episode 2 at the Chinese Grand Prix. Episode 3 will be at the Spanish Grand Prix, for those of you who are wondering. With our custom season, I get to choose the races. And then after that, we're going to Monaco. So we've got a couple of interesting races. My worst track, I think, possibly of the lot is next. And Monaco potentially could be something of a holy grail, let's just say. But anyway, I really hope you enjoyed watching that. Let me know what you thought of this series down in the comments below. Please remember to subscribe if you enjoyed it. Remember, you can follow me on Instagram and join my Discord server. Both links are in the description. And until next time, goodbye.